Welcome to Alter. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. This podcast explores the practice of transformation, of growth, as a dance between hustle and flow, altering, changing, growing, becoming, and altering, offering, surrendering, opening to divine conspiracy. It's the dance of the leader, athlete, creator, entrepreneur, committed not just to optimal expression, but to exceptional being. So here are adventures in sweat and divine conspiracy. Awake to all the grit, dirt, and complexity of our world. Alert to the graces that come alongside the struggle, the hustle. Encouragement, an infusion of courage for the moments you need it most. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. Welcome to Alter. Friends, so I've been thinking a lot about community, not just because I've moved to a new place, the New Mexico wild, and am building a new one from the ground up, but this moment, this pandemic, this political climate has us all asking big questions about our part in a whole. We're thinking about in-person pods, who's in your tightest circle, and about isolation and distancing and masks and vaccines and social justice. And all of it is spotlighting this reality. My health is tied up in your health. Your health is tied up in my health. And even the most introverted of us are feeling longing for the kind of ordinary connections we used to have. Even just smiling at someone across a store or striking up a conversation in line, we're realizing how core those are to our sense of being held in a web of shared humanity. I've loved this line Glennon Doyle drops often in relation to her phenomenal nonprofit Together Rising. We belong to each other. We really are a species. We're seeing how in the same way a forest or a kelp bed is at some level one giant communal interdependent organism, sending microscopic or energetic communications. We also belong to each other, and reverberations of connection nourish us in ways we can't necessarily measure. This phrase, we belong to each other, is maybe as beautiful as it is offensive or even violent. Belonging is otherwise known as slavery, right? Or subtler relationships of codependence, where not our person, but our happiness become the property of someone else. So there's these two poles of relationship: interdependence and community, and independence and sovereignty. Sovereignty is a word that's getting thrown around a lot lately, especially in wellness circles, in relationship to making choices with our communities in mind. It's got a grandeur to it, right? Sovereignty. So grown up and self-assured and regal. It's literally a word for a king. I want to be sovereign. My good old American heart, long inspired by the underdog story of the American Revolution and its language of personal autonomy, loves it. You know, the political cartoons in England during the Revolutionary War often showed Americans as teenagers throwing a fit. And it's not a bad metaphor of where we might have been on the spectrum of development. That phase of hormone-spiked teenage rebellion as we figure out who we are in contrast to what we came from, whenever it is in life that we hit that crisis, is important. But it's step one to reintegrating ourselves into healthy community. Wisdom is usually in the in-between, right? In the contradiction, the gray area that's best articulated in poetry rather than doctrine. I think my favorite poem about community is a little one by Hafez. A hunting party sometimes has a greater chance of flushing love and God out into the open than a warrior all alone. Gotta love that it's called a party, huh? When I think about choosing sovereignty over a party, it's a pretty sad option. When we think about living heartward-ly, attuning to our own individual vision and how delicious it is to feel that sense of integrity, how do we harmonize that with our shared common life? That's my favorite definition of politics, the life of the polis, the city, our shared common life. As I've been thinking about it during quarantine, this is the vision I've landed on. Well-chosen community. I mean that in two ways. Choosing the community you want to build and choosing the community you're already in. Choosing to make it one. Loving the ones you're with. In last week's podcast, I invited you into Heartwood, the vision casting workshop I've created to crystallize a vision for where we're growing toward in 12 spheres of our lives. One of those spheres Heartwood explores is community. And I want to share with you a strategy from the resilience module that's been super clarifying to me in choosing the community I want to build, and to a bunch of you who've taken the workshop and shared what you've realized. This is most powerful with real ink on real paper. So I'm going to describe a simple sketch for you to draw, or you can download and print this page of the Heartwood workbook at nicolemeline.com/catalyze community. If you're drawing, turn your paper horizontally or landscape mode and draw 3 concentric circles, like big rings of a tree, each a third of the page. These are expanding circles of your community. And as you draw or print this, I can't resist another poem, which has become the lens of Heartwood. It's by Rilke, who's my 19th century Austrian boyfriend. His Book of Hours is a weird, haunting collection of love letters to the God just beyond our grasp, like this one. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I circle around God, around the primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years and still I don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? Phew, right? I'll have what he's having. I live my life in widening circles. I love that vision of growth, of aging and wizening, increasing in wisdom. And I really love it as an image of healthy communal life. There's a strong consensus among sociologists that we can have meaningful friendship with about 150 people. 150 is about the maximum amount of people we really can know and be known by at a given time. It's mind-blowing to think that before air travel became accessible only about 60 years ago, humans were socially evolved to know and be known by a small circle of people, either in one place or maybe in a nomadic circuit for their whole lives. And as much joy and wisdom as travel brings us, something in us wants to journey alongside, to witness and be witnessed by others as we become ourselves. It's crazy to think about how social media has radically shifted this paradigm of, knowing and being known by this intimate circle lifelong. So that's a whole other conversation, right? But it's definitely worth giving some thought to. One of the spheres we explore in Heartwood is social media, and ask a lot of juicy questions about what healthy engagement, actually nourishing, mutually nourishing engagement in this platform feels like. We all have a global broadcast platform in our pockets. It's absolutely mind-blowing, the potential of that and the power of that for better and for worse. And it's definitely something that is worth crafting a soulful philosophy around. We can tend to think about community passively as something that happens on its own, or maybe isn't happening. But of course, it's collaborative. Birth, bringing a human into this world, which is the most basic form of community, is usually a challenging, collaborative, not unpainful process, and it leads to incomparable joy and wonder. Let's think of that as a foundation for what community building can look like. I remember when President Obama was running for the presidency and caught some flack or raised eyebrows early on for describing himself as a community organizer. People questioned whether that was a legit job title. But that description is a pretty great vision of politics, our shared common life. Of course, we need organizers, hosts, maitre d's, choir directors, cruise directors, team moms. All of these roles are such an art. The best thing I got out of a long year in organic chemistry in college was the word catalyst. It's a chemical element in a reaction that allows two atoms to fuse together to become a molecule. It's the impetus. It's the element that kind of pushes them together. It's the matchmaker. By the way, can we pause for a second to recognize at the foundation of our universe is atoms coming together to form molecules, new entities with new capacities beyond what they would have had alone, wholes that are greater than the sum of their parts. So we all stand and sit and everything upon a foundation of community building. So what might it look like for you to become a community catalyst? The catalyst, the community organizer of the kind of community you long for. What are the types of gatherings you dream of? What are the types of conversations? Quarantine and this global meltdown has been a kind of sieve for community. Have your relationships kind of sifted like sand through a filter? You've seen who checks in and who you want to be checking in on consistently. Maybe you've realized who you want to be checking in on more, who you want closer. And in America, we've never been so divided along political lines as we are right now. In our lifetimes, we've never so needed community catalysts. Folks willing to invest intention and energy and time and vision into rebuilding the bonds that will nourish our flourishing. So let's become that. Step one is to get really granular about who you're working with right now. So let's do this. On your page, in the first left-hand ring, write down the people who are core to you. These are your people, your essentials, your family, blood or chosen. You want to be talking to them several times a week, maybe daily. This exercise becomes really potent when you realize who's on the borders. Who do you want to be core, insider circle, and actually you haven't been in touch with them for a month or 6? Who's witnessing your life? Whose lives are you witnessing? Who's at your graveside? Let's befriend that scene, that future, and live in the peace of that integrity. Okay, next ring. The people you dearly love and respect, but there's some boundaries around the intimacy of this relationship for whatever reason. Maybe professional boundaries, maybe you're at very different phases of life or across big time zone differences. Maybe boundaries you've thoughtfully created or they've thoughtfully created. But these are people you want in your life for the long haul, for years or forever. And you want to be intentional about consistent relationship with them. It can be really freeing to realize folks from ring 1 can actually be moved to ring 2. You can still have long-term, mutually enriching relationship with some boundaries that keep you sane. And good to recognize people you want closer than what the relationships become, moving maybe from ring 2 to ring 1 into your inner circle. And also so important to recognize what you may not have, but you want. If these circles are looking emptier than you want them to be, it's so powerful to see the space, to make the space you want to fill. You might want to add a few extra rings. As you think about your energetic relationship to other people, getting clear about the kind of relationship you want to cultivate with business clients, extended family, mentors, mentees, people who inspire you. The third ring, or the final ring, if you add more, is also a powerful clarification. What relationships have you outgrown? What relationships are more draining than energizing and either need boundaries or goodbye or closure of some kind? What relationships would it feel really good to bless and release, to be free of? We can do this kindly, quietly, or clearly. As Brené Brown says, clear is kind. Hopefully release with some kind of ceremony, which can be so simple. One breath with presence is a ceremony. One inhale and exhale. Or burning is always good. A pyromance with your future. Palo Santo or sage, or a farewell letter of the things you don't want to waste a breath on. Clear and get clear. What is that finely tight-knit, beautiful tangle of community root system you're anchored into, you draw from and contribute to? What is the second layer, the sapwood, the diverse, funky community you're intentionally invested in? And what are you releasing to the third ring? Let's come back to those visions of the gatherings and conversations you dream of. How can you creatively start to spark those now, even in the weird constraints of quarantine? Constraint always sparks creativity. Limits, counterintuitively, get us thinking in new ways, workarounds, reimaginations. So here's a juicy question. How can you lay a foundation now in quarantine for the kind of strong, deeply invested connection you want to energetically nourish you? You want to be a part of nourishing as we build a world on the other side of this deep work in. And this is the question I keep coming back to now and being challenged by in this world of quarantine and vaccines and distance. How do I love my neighbor as myself? Or as one of my poets, W.H. Auden, puts it, we must love our crooked neighbor with our crooked heart. How can I love my neighbor well? Literally, love my neighbor well. It's a good question to leave hanging. I'd love to hear what all this stirs in you. Love to hear new ideas or brave moves it sparks. So if this podcast inspires you, please subscribe and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and share it with friends or on social media. Tag me at Nicole Meline and let me know how we're collaborating. And if you want more of this intentional reflection and vision casting in relationship to all spheres of your life, body, mind, spirit, creative work, finances, community, I've got so much more for you in the Heartwood workshop at NicoleMeline.com/Heartwood. And we're working in and working out of all of it in the Altar membership and community at altar.NicoleMeline.com. I'm going to go out with a song that has become my quiet anthem for this season of quarantine. Kate Tempest's People's Faces. I make a playlist every year of songs that just break my heart open called Songs Changing My Life. I'll link to last year's in the show notes, where I'm also going to start a list of wise books on this huge topic of community building. And I challenge you to play this song loud tonight with the lights down low and just go in. Let's catalyze the community we dream of as we alter together.
Well, here we are, dancing in the rumbling dark, so come a little closer. Give me something to grasp. Give me your beautiful, crumbling heart. Another disaster, catharsis, another half-discarded mirage, another mask slips. I face off with the physical. My head's ringing from the love of the stars. There is too much pretense here, and too much depends on the fragile wages and extortionate rents here. We're working every dread day that is given us, feeling like the person people meet really isn't us, like we're gonna buckle underneath the trouble, like any minute now the struggle's gonna finish us. And then we smile at all our friends. It's hard. We got our heads down and our hackles up, our backs against the wall. I can feel you aching. None of this was written in stone. There is nothing we're forbidden to know, and I can feel things changing. Even when I'm weak and I'm breaking, I stand weeping at the train station, 'cause I can see your faces. There is so much peace to be found in people's faces.